Hello everyone and welcome to the second game we'll be showing from round 4 of this year's Norway Chess. It is Gukesh versus Fabiano Caruana, and this is the Armageddon game. Their classical game ended in a draw. It was a really tough battle. Fabi was pushing for the better part of the game. At one point there was one instance where Fabi was even winning, but it was not easy to find. Fabi decided to trade queens instead of complicating, and Gukesh was able to get a nice draw. Now we go into Armageddon, and we all know what happens in Armageddon. White has to win, but White also has more time. If it's a draw, then Black wins. So Gukesh with White opens with knight to f3, and there is no increment before move 40, so with less time on the clock, we have knight to f6, Fabi starting with 7 minutes. You have exactly those 7 minutes before you reach move 40, then only 1 second increment, which is still, you know, for actually moving your hand and hitting the clock, I don't know, for me that's way too little. Online, of course, that's more than enough, but yeah, in actual combat, I mean, so sometimes you have to make a move that you wouldn't make just because it takes you not as much time to, you know, go after the other piece. So it's crazy. So knight f6, we have b3, pawn to d5, and bishop to b2. So again, basically the Nimzo-Larsen transpose from the Reti, the classical variation, and e6 is the more popular idea. But here we have pawn to c5. Transposing into the Nimzo-Larsen attack, and pawn to e3. We have pawn to g6, and now pawn to c4. Challenging the d5 pawn, d captures, and now bishop captures is the way everyone plays it. But Gukesh has to win this. Of course, he knows that Fabi knows the bishop captures on c4 line. He plays b captures on c4. He played it instantly, and this is, I believe, a great idea for an Armageddon game where, you know, you're hoping that Fabi does not notice. There are only a couple of games where it was played. For example, Vincent Keimer used it against the Max Warmerdam. Their game ended in a draw, but other than that, not really played in top level chess. We have bishop to g7 by Fabi and bishop to e2. I have no idea if Fabi knows the line or he just wants to, you know, continue playing normal moves quickly. Maybe to appear that he knows the line, but, you know, who knows how much Fabi knows. He probably knows everything. We have castles, and knight to c6. We have pawn to d3, and now there are a couple of games that reach this position. For example, b6 is a very popular move here. Fabi plays rook to b8, probably influenced by Magnus with his great rook b1, a3, and b4 later on. Fabi also wants to play rook b8, a6, and b5 later on. And it is not as of move 9 that we have a completely new game. So, okay, knight c3 by Gukesh, controlling that b5 square. Pawn to a6, preparing pawn to b5. And Gukesh stops it. Pawn to a4. We have pawn to b6 and queen to d2. Okay, the rooks are connected. What do you play now? We have bishop to f5 and rook f to d1. Queen to d7. Fabi does the same, and knight to d5. Now, what is the idea behind this move? The idea is that should Fabi go for knight captures on d5, you will capture, and now if queen captures, because you either move the knight or you capture, there's e4 and you can resign the game. So that's the plan. So Fabi goes back, bishop to e6, we have knight captures on f6, e captures on f6, and now bishop to c3. Looks like a pretty weird move, but you are clearing the b2 square for the queen, and then you will put a lot of pressure on this diagonal. We have pawn to a5, closing up the position like this, as you should probably, because you only need a draw to win the match. But sometimes you have to play for more than a draw to get a draw. And here he makes it a bit too easy for Gukesh. Gukesh goes queen to b2. Okay, he's ready to capture on f6, queen to e7. And now he goes knight to d2. This is not very precise. He should play d4. Prepare pawn to d5, and then after captures, he's still threatening d5, and once the bishop moves, you still play d5, and it's just a very, very strong position for white. But maybe Gukesh knew this, and he just wants to, you know, give Fabi a false sense of security, and he plays knight back to d2. And now Fabi should play bishop to f5 and, you know, not have that bishop on e6. Tactically, it also helps because now d4 just loses, captures, and you blunder the bishop on e2 now that the light square bishop moved from the e file. But after knight d2, Fabi played knight to e5, and he played right into Gukesh's plan, if that was his plan with knight to d2. He strikes with pawn to d4, c captures, e captures, and knight to d7. And for those of you who may not know this, probably you will, as I'm probably going to make it a title. Today is Gukesh's birthday, so, you know, he's playing. The last game we also said it was his birthday, but then it was his birthday in India. Now it's his birthday in Norway, where he is playing. We have rook to e1 and pawn to h5. Now here, the question is what to play. If you play something like queen d5, okay, you want to get off of that e file, then d5, and the bishop is lost. Bishop to f5, g4. There's no way to handle the bishop here. So after rook to e1, pawn to h5 by Fabi, and now d5. We have bishop to f5, bishop to d3, opening up an attack towards the queen, queen to d6, and now bishop captures on f5, g captures, tripling Fabi's pawns, and that's a little bit, you know, too much to handle. We have queen c2 going after the f5 pawn, queen to f4 defending, and now the immediate rook e3, going after rook to f3 to gobble up the f5 pawn. So knight to e5, yes, you are stopping rook f3, but the knight can also be captured. It's definitely a decision that you have to you know, think twice before you do so, because you will undouble black's pawns, and you know, you don't want to do that unless you're gaining something. So bishop captures on e5, f captures, and rook to f3, attacking the queen and the f5 pawn, and Fabi manages to complicate. Queen d4 attacks the rook on a1. We have rook to d1. Beautifully played by Gukesh. And now the problem is, if Fabi wants to keep everything and plays something like pawn to f4, knight e4 traps the queen, as the knight also stops the queen from going back to c5. So after rook d1, pawn to e4, and now rook captures on f5. And the question is, what can Fabi play here? It's not a lot. There's not a lot. For example, pawn to e3, you can play a lot of things, like knight to e4. Again, you put pressure on the queen. You can't go here, you can't go here, you can't go here. And if captures on f2, king f1, white is perfectly fine here. For example, queen to e3, rook f3, you kick the queen back, you start advancing the passed pawn, and that's pretty much it. So after rook captures, we have rook f to e8, and now, okay, you want to play e3, but Gukesh says, nope, now you're not playing it. Knight controls e3, the queen is attacked, queen to c5, and now knight to e3, defending absolutely everything. And Fabi can just wait. And probably Fabi would just resign this, but since he only needs a draw to win the match, of course, he will try everything. And of course, he is Fabi. Queen to d6, we have rook captures on h5. You can consolidate, you can play some reinforcing moves, but even just grabbing a pawn wins, as Gukesh's position is so good. We have queen to g6, attacking the rook, and queen e2. You could also play g4. Only hope for Fabi is for Gukesh to mess something up, you know, monumentally. We have rook b to c8, putting more pressure on c4, but pawn to d6. Now, even with the threat of d7, which is just terrible, rook c to d8 and pawn to d7. We have rook to e6 and now rook h to d5. The doubled rooks control the d pawn. That's, you know, it's too much. But Fabi has to try. Bishop to e5. Pawn to h4, not even allowing for some, you know, sneaky sacrifices, and now pawn to f5. Fabi has to go all out. Pawn to c5. So what is the idea here? Well, the idea is just to capture with the rook and go rook c8. That's all there is. So Fabi goes pawn to f4, and he's now hoping that Gukesh goes back. For example, knight f1, pawn to f3, and Gukesh can resign. But of course, Gukesh does not do that. He plays pawn to h5, which is a brilliant move, and especially with so little time on the clock, I mean, he just spots it brilliantly. Point is that if you keep the queen on the g file to still threaten f3, now you can play knight g4, because after f3 and, for example, captures, there's no rook g6. I mean, it's just a crazy idea to spot. So after h5, we have queen to f7. Now both players have reached move 40, and they get that additional second increment, but no increment is helping Fabi here, even if it was like a minute increment. We have knight to g4, now with the threat of capturing on e5, and also if the rook moves from the defense of h6, knight h6 will just pick up the queen. So it's just a very bad position. Bishop c7, c captures on b6, bishop captures, and now rook to d6, offering a trade of rooks. king to f8, and now again Gukesh, just brutally precise, queen to b2. Attacks the undefended bishop and also threatens queen to h8. So Fabi quickly moves it, bishop to c7, and first rook captures on e6. We have queen captures, queen to h8 with check, king to e7, and now queen to g7 with check. We have queen to f7, and queen to g5 check, king to f8, and now knight to e5. And that's pretty much it. Queen to b3 was played, hoping for some tricks, but there are many ways you can finish this. There is one particularly poetic, so have at it while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding the cleanest mate, and that is a mate in 7. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, you move the rook from being attacked by the queen to being attacked by the bishop. But of course, the rook cannot be captured. And even if you try a check, king h2, there are no more checks. If you capture the rook, we can... after rook to d6, we can even show it. You're just going to capture now the undefended rook on d8. And after king g7, it will be a very swift king hunt. King to h7, queen g6 check, king h8, d8 queen, and now you just give up everything. And once you gobble up everything, it will be this checkmate or pretty much any other checkmate. So after rook to d6, pawn to e3, one last attempt by Fabi. Maybe Gukesh, messes it up somehow. But he plays rook to f6 check, and he was in this position on move 51 that Fabiano Caruana resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Once you move the king, it's merely a matter of a nice check, and after queen to f7, which is the only reply, now you just give a queen captures on f7, and that, of course, is checkmate. So yeah, crazy game. Gukesh beautifully defended in classical. He managed to survive until the end. Like I said, Fabi was winning in that one particular position. But yeah, I mean, if you don't fight it in classical, you're not finding it. And then in Armageddon, it was all Gukesh. He had to win, and he went for the... he just went for it and... won beautifully. I think also one of the problems was that Fabi played too passively with this pawn to a5 move. He wanted to close the position, saying, I only need a draw, I don't need to do anything. But yeah, that we've seen many times. If you play like that, you're gonna lose. Sometimes sometimes you really have to fight for your life and try to win just to get a draw. You can't just get a draw on demand, even if you're Fabi, obviously. So yeah, really hope you guys enjoyed that. Let's check out the standings after 4 rounds have been played, as tomorrow is a rest day. Hikaru and Wei Yi drew their game, and Wei Yi won in Armageddon. Or rather, it was a draw in Armageddon, but Wei Yi had the black pieces. He was winning throughout most of the game, but he just, didn't care to win, as a draw was enough for him. But yeah, definitely different than what Fabi did here. Wei Yi obtained the winning position with black, and then he said, okay, I mean, I don't need to look for a win. It's a draw. It's enough for me to win the match. Doesn't really matter. And then he got the draw, thus winning the match. So Magnus, with his win in classical against Arjun Ergesi, takes the lead now, going into the rest day after 4 rounds with 8 points. Fabiano, second place with 7 points. Hikaru, 5.5, third place. Fourth place, Gukesh now, very nice done, tied with Arjun. And in last place, for the moment, Wei Yi, who's been playing incredible chess. And, it's weird seeing him in last. But, okay, the tournament is still young. Anything can happen. We'll see how it goes. I mean, in a super tournament where you have like 10 players, you'll be like, oh, I can't believe this guy's last because he's so good. It's a super tournament. Yes, but everyone is so good because it's a super tournament. And especially when you have a super tournament with 6 people, then it's like, oh, you have Wei Yi. I mean, imagine a tournament where Wei Yi is last. It's almost unimaginable. But yeah, that's how super tournaments work. So that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have something that you would like to see covered, I mean, I could show you the Hikaru versus Wei Yi if you guys really want. It's not a problem. Or if anything else that you would like to see from the chess world, maybe the Hans versus Dubov Blitz match. We could also check some games from there. And that's why you have to use that hashtag suggestion in the comments. So that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Nidi Kumar, Marcus Chib, Mariusz Klimek, Juan, and Robert Arathun for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. Oh, and a big happy birthday to Gukesh.